Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be faceting a garnet. Not this garnet, there's already one that I've dopped up and it's already preformed a little bit into a round shape. This is from the Emerald Creek site in Idaho, where there's lots of star garnets to be found. But this one looked very light and I don't think it would star. And since my daughter was born in January, her birthstone is garnet. And I'm going to make a 3mm round garnet. This stone her grandfather found. So he found the stone, I'm going to facet it, and it's going to be set in a piece of jewelry for my mother-in-law. The stone right now is about 5.6, 5.7 millimeters. So I need to go down another couple of millimeters, unfortunately. I have to lose quite a bit of mass off of this stone, but it is what it is. I think you can see, even in this light, there's a bit of red coming through. I'm sure this stone will be dark, but you can only cut it and hope for the best. To help my chances, I'm going to be using this design, the Standard Brilliance for Sapphire by Wayne Barnett. Sapphire and garnets have the same refractive index, or pretty close refractive index. And importantly, they have the same critical angle. So the angles on the cuts themselves, I don't have to change. And this should give a good yield for the brightness in a garnet. In addition, the other pieces of stones in the jewelry are also her other grandchildren's birthstones. I have a specific diameter that I need to get to, and the other stones are cut in kind of a brilliant style. So this standard brilliant should work okay. I've got the stone cut down to about 3.5 millimeters in this direction, and you can see how flat that is and how small the stone's going to be. I'm hoping this dop will hold up. It's just wax holding it on there, but you can see some color coming through there, which will be hopefully stay as I make the stone smaller. And behind me, I figured I'd point out that I'm doing the girdle now, so I have a splash pan set up around, or a splash guard set up around here, with the splash pan lowered so I can put the stone at a 90-degree angle on the lap right here. And this is a 600 grit lap, more than enough for the size of this stone. I think I may go down to 1200 after bringing everything down to about the 3.5 mark, just so I can cut out any imperfections with the 1200 grit lap in terms of scratches. And behind here is a piece of cardboard that's already kind of wet from catching water as it sprays out behind here. The stone is now sized down to about 3.4 millimeters all around. And I ended up doing just freewheeling, where on my handpiece here, there's a little insert that blocks this guard from coming down onto the index wheel, so I can just spin this freely. And that allows me to just rotate the stone around and get a uniform thickness all the way around. There are a couple of inclusions on this face here, on the side closest to the camera, that may come out to some degree when I cut in the extra 0.4 millimeters. It's going to be hard to avoid because they're right in the middle, so I either have to go right above them or cut way down and risk losing the stone entirely. So I'm just going to try to cut as little as possible off the top to try to avoid cutting down into them too far, because there's a second inclusion further down closer to the base. Here's the garnet after the 1200 topper. I had to go down to that in order to do these smaller facets because the 600 was just going to tear through them. And if I can find it, you can see that diamond shape coming off of the tip of the pavilion. That's one of the, I guess, accent facets. And I started cutting that in with the 1200, but that was just going to go so fast that I was definitely going to overcut. And I think that'll still be very quick to cut in with just the final polish, which is the next stage. It's been kind of nerve-wracking to work on a stone this small, because I keep expecting it to fly off the dop. Here's the pavilion all polished up to 50,000 diamond. And I even was able to polish the girdle just a little bit. You only need to polish about a fingernail width, because that's how thick the girdle is going to be in the end. So I set the angle to about 89.5 degrees. and set it just down on the lap to just polish that very tip of the pavilion, or the girdle there. The accent facets of the pavilion cut in real easy. So now it's time to transfer this and do the crown. Having a small stone at this stage makes it a little easier, because then when I put the dop on this end and melt the wax around it, the heat will have farther to travel to go down to this dop, so hopefully I won't get any misalignment as I heat up the wax and do the transfer. I think the transfer went well, and I did what I did on the pavilion side, where I just ground down to a cone using the 600 topper, and now I'll do the 1200 in a minute. But I did make life a little more difficult for myself, because the wax came up above the girdle line in a number of places, and I just have a few facets here where I can just make out the original top of the pavilion, or edge of the pavilion where it meets the girdle. And so I'll just have to use these as sort of the guiding line to start and hopefully align my facets and get an even girdle, and then go around and cut down into wax on the other sides that it went too far. So that's one of the downsides of using wax, is, especially with a small stone, if you go above the girdle, it can be very hard to tell where to cut down to. Here's where we are with the crown after the 1200 lap. You can see I've cut in 2 sets of facets, or 2 tiers of facets. The lower one goes down to the girdle, and then another set is at about 28 degrees. There's a 3rd tier of facets that I haven't cut in, and I've cut the table, roughly maybe a little more than halfway down to where it will be eventually. I think this is small enough. I'm just going to go, I switched over to my 50K on tin final polish lap, and I'll work at the tiers and go up and then do the table last and cut that down to where it needs to be. And we're all done. Polished to 50,000 diamond on a tin lap. Let's see, we'll tilt this a little bit so you can see some facets winking in the light. You can see they don't all come to a point. Some of them kind of got away from me, but the beauty is this is at 3 times magnification, and if I go, this is 2 times, you can already see they're starting to disappear. And at 1 times magnification, it just looks like nice little facets. Now it's time to take the stone off the dop, clean it up, and we'll see how much we weigh and what the final size was. Here's a finished look at the stone. It's actually really light, which is surprising. I think there is maybe a fracture in there that's kind of casting light to one side, but it's a nice kind of purpley, almost rhodolite maybe. It's a little too light to be almandine, I think, in terms of garnet species. And there is rhodolite found in the area of the Emerald Creek garnets. So let's find out how much we weigh. On the scale here, 0.13 carats, which means that we are at 0.025 grams. And the stone itself it's a little uneven, but it's 2.98 to 3.05 millimeters wide. I think that should do nicely.